From what you're going to have for lunch to a huge career move, our lives are just one decision after another. But have you ever really stopped to think about how we make those choices? Well, in this explainer, we're diving deep into the fascinating and frankly kind of weird science of how our brains actually do it. Let's get into it. You know the feeling, right? You've been there, staring at a menu with way too many options, or looking at two job offers and you just freeze. You're trying so hard to make the right decision, the perfect one, but it feels impossible. That feeling? That's what we're going to unpack today. All right, first up, let's talk about the ideal decision maker. This is the version of us that economists used to dream about. It's a perfectly logical, calculating machine. For our purposes, let's just call it the robot brain. All logic, no feelings. Now, the software running on this robot brain is something called expected utility theory. And the idea is pretty simple. A rational person would always choose the option with the highest score. You just weigh the odds of something happening against how good the reward is. Okay, don't let the formula freak you out. All this is saying is you take the probability, the chance of success, and you multiply it by its utility. And utility is just a fancy word for how much you'd actually value that outcome. You do that for all your options, and boom, the one with the highest number is the logical winner. Simple. Let's see how this works in the real world. Imagine you're picking a wellness program. Program A, it's got a 60% chance of working, and you'd rate that success an 8 out of 10. Do the math, you get an expected utility of 4.8. Program B is more of a long shot, only a 40% chance of success, but if it works, it's a perfect 10. That gives it a score of 4.0. So the robot brain looks at the numbers and says, Program A, no contest. It's the logical choice. But here's the thing. We don't always choose Program A, do we? Sometimes we go for the long shot, for that bigger prize. So what gives? Why do our real-life choices so often just ignore this perfect, clean logic? Are we just bad at math? Well, the answer is no. We're not bad at math. We're just human. Which brings us to the reality of how our actual brains work, what we'll call the human brain, with all its amazing shortcuts and, yeah, its limitations. So this leads us to a really big idea from a guy named Herbert Simon, bounded rationality. Basically, he said, hey, we aren't supercomputers. We don't have all the information in the world, we don't have unlimited brain power, and we definitely don't have unlimited time. Our ability to be perfectly rational is bounded or limited by real life. And because of those limits, we do something really interesting. We don't optimize. We don't spend forever searching for the single, absolute best solution. No way. Instead, we satisfice. We just look for the first option that's, good enough. Think about it like this. An HR manager has a stack of 100 applications. Are they really going to interview every single person to find the mathematically perfect one? Of course not. They'll set a bar, say anyone who scores above an 85 on a test, and they hire the first person who clears it. It's fast, it's practical, it's satisfying. But it's not just about taking shortcuts. Our decisions are also massively influenced by our feelings, because it turns out our emotions, especially when it comes to winning and losing, can totally hijack that logical robot brain we talked about. And this is the world of prospect theory from the brilliant psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Their huge insight was that we don't make choices based on some final, absolute number. Nope. We make them based on the potential for a gain or a loss from where we are right now. Our starting point, our reference point, changes everything. And right at the heart of this is a powerful bias called loss aversion. Get this. Gaining $100 feels good, right? Of course, but losing that same $100, psychologically, that hurts about twice as much as the pleasure you got from the gain. We hate losing way more than we love winning. And this leads to one of the most mind-bending discoveries in psychology, the framing effect. Check this out. Imagine a health crisis is going to affect 600 people. With Program A, you're told it saves 200 people. It's framed as a pure gain. You're saving lives. And as you'd expect, most people pick this safe, certain option. But now look at this. The situation is mathematically identical, but the wording is flipped. Program B is framed as a loss. 400 people will die. Because we hate losses so much that certain outcomes suddenly feels awful. So people become risk takers. They're more likely to gamble on a different, riskier program just to avoid that certain loss. Same math, different words, totally different choice. It's wild. Okay, so our brains have limits, they're biased, and they're easily tricked by how a choice is presented. Yikes. But knowing that is half the battle. So what's the other half? How do we fight back against these glitches when the stakes are high? Well, that brings us to our final section, a toolkit for building a smarter brain. The main tool is called Multi-Criteria Decision Analysis, or MCDA. It's a really fancy name for a pretty simple idea. You break down a big, messy choice into smaller, manageable pieces so you can evaluate it systematically. You're basically giving your brain a better, clearer process to follow. And a really practical way to do this is with weighted scoring. It's just 4 steps. First, you decide what actually matters to you, your criteria. Second, and this is key, you give each one a weight based on how important it is. Third, you score your options against each criterion. And finally, you do some simple multiplication and addition to find your winner. Let's put this into action. We're back to choosing that program, but now we're going to be way more deliberate. We care about cost, effectiveness, and satisfaction. But we've decided that effectiveness is by far the most important thing, so we give it a heavy weight of 0.5. After we score everything and run the numbers, look what happens. Program B, the one our robot brain might have dismissed, actually pulls ahead with a score of 7.8. So why is this so powerful? Because it forces your gut feelings and biases out into the open. It makes you be explicit about what you're willing to trade off. And it works with our brain's limitations by breaking down a complex problem into something simple. Plus, if you're making a choice as a team, this gives everyone a clear, shared reason for the decision. No more arguing. So, what a journey, huh? We started with that perfect, logical robot brain. Then we faced the messy reality of our emotional human brain. And finally, we landed on a practical way to build a smarter process for ourselves. And that leaves us with one last question to think about. Your brain is capable of all of these ways of thinking, the logical, the emotional, the structured. The real question is, the next time you have a big choice to make, are you going to be in control of these models, or are they going to be in control of you?